In the early 20th century, there was a man in Europe for whom emperors sat perfectly still for hours. Kings patiently waited their turn. Even popes made exceptions just for him. But this man didn't start his journey in palaces. Instead, he sat in a cramped, suffocating room, fixing scratches on strangers' faces for mere pennies. His name was Philip de Laszlo. Today, we uncover the story of a poor tailor's son who conquered the royal courts of Europe. Coming up, the retoucher's secret, the Vatican challenge, the Guinness millions, prisoner of the crown, and the last queen. Budapest, 1869. A boy named Philip Lob is born into the humble family of a simple tailor. No money, no name, no chance. In Europe back then, your background was a life sentence. The doors to high society slammed shut before you could even take your first step. But there was something inside this boy that no door could lock away. He painted incredibly well. As a teenager, he began working as an apprentice in a photography studio. For hours, days, years, he sat and fixed other people's imperfections, blemishes, cracks, the marks of time. While other aspiring artists and academies studied the theory of light and shadow, he learned to see the truth of a face. Every wrinkle, every hidden pain, every shadow people try to forget. This tedious, humbling work became his harshest and most vital school. And one day, this very skill opened a door that had been locked to thousands of others. The young Laszlo was commissioned to paint a portrait of the ambitious Prince Ferdinand of Bulgaria. The prince had posed for many before, but it was Laszlo's portrait that struck him to the very core. And the prince did something almost unheard of for someone of his status. He began recommending the young Hungarian to other monarchs. One commission led to another. Fame spread faster than he could even process. It seemed he had made it. He was at the top. But Laszlo had no idea what lay ahead. His true test was just around the corner. Waiting for him was a client who had spent years turning down Europe's finest artists. A man whose single word could either elevate him to unimaginable heights or shut every door forever. Who was it? Find out in the next part. Imagine this. You are a young artist whose name is already being whispered in palaces. You have just painted the portrait of a Bulgarian prince, and the doors that were once firmly shut are finally starting to crack open. And then, out of nowhere, a letter. An invitation from the man whom millions revere as God's vicar on earth. From the Pope himself. At the turn of the century, Pope Leo XIII was a living legend. One of the oldest pontiffs in history. A man whose word could alter the fate of entire nations. Yet at the same time, he was a man who absolutely hated to pose. For years, he turned down the finest masters of Paris, Rome, and London. Hundreds of geniuses lined up for this single opportunity, but the Vatican remained an unyielding fortress. Until one day, its doors opened for the son of a Budapest tailor, for Philip de Laszlo. This wasn't just a portrait. This was Judgment Day for the young artist. When Leo XIII, defying his own rules, finally sat before him, most artists in his position would have tried to paint a symbol. Regal robes, divine majesty, infallibility. But de Laszlo did the unexpected. He painted a human being. Before us is an old man, bearing the weight of millions of believers on his fragile shoulders. A sharp mind, the profound loneliness of absolute power. A burden that cannot be shared with anyone. He didn't just paint the Pope. He painted the burden. The result stunned everyone. The portrait earned the young de Laszlo the gold medal at the Universal Exhibition in Paris. Now, he wasn't just talented, he was the artist blessed by the Vatican itself. Kings, princes, dukes, and tycoons, the entire European elite lined up outside his studio. Doors that just yesterday were locked to a tailor's son now swung wide open on their own. International fame, immense wealth, absolute recognition. It seemed the world was at his feet. Yet at the very peak of this triumph, Philip de Laszlo hit a wall that even his brilliant brush could not dismantle. It wasn't power. It wasn't criticism. It wasn't envy. It was the class chasm. On the other side of this divide stood a girl he loved more than life itself. A girl whose family considered even Europe's most famous painter far too poor for their daughter. A woman whose last name was known across the entire British Empire. Guinness. European monarchs considered it an honor to shake his hand. The Pope made exceptions just for him. Yet to the family of the girl he loved more than life itself, the brilliant artist Philip de Laszlo remained. Simply too poor. Her name was Lucy Guinness. Today, that last name is instantly synonymous with beer. But at the turn of the 19th century, the Guinnesses were an empire, one of the wealthiest and most influential families in all of Britain. Their wealth was staggering, almost unimaginable. They dined with kings and shaped the fates of nations. Lucy's father, Henry, served as the governor of the Bank of Ireland at the time and was the assistant managing director of the Arthur Guinness, Son and Co. Brewery. And then, at a social gala in Munich, this young heiress met a young Hungarian painter with no money, no title, and no family pedigree. The family's verdict was swift and cold as a blade. No, a liaison with a penniless artist from Central Europe was a disgrace, an unacceptable risk. The lovers were strictly forbidden from even seeing each other. The story could have ended right there. Just like thousands of similar stories of that era, the wealthy girl marries a lord, while the artist is left alone with his paintings and a broken heart. But the Guinness family failed to account for one thing: the incredible willpower of Philip de Laszlo. Years of separation passed, years of painful waiting. But while they lived on hope, Europe fell at de Laszlo's feet. His career skyrocketed. Portraits of monarchs, gold medals, staggering commissions. His name now unlocked every door. The man who yesterday was deemed an unsuitable match had become the most coveted guest in the continent's most exclusive palaces. And then, for the first time in years, the proud British aristocrats yielded. Love triumphed. They were married. The son of a Budapest tailor entered London's highest circles on his own terms, as a recognized genius. They had 6 children. His lavish estate became a place where ministers, dukes, and ambassadors lined up to visit. Eventually, he was even granted a noble title. This was the absolute peak. Wealth, fame, a beloved wife by his side. 6 children, everything one could ever dream of. Life, it seemed, had finally become perfect. But 1917 changed everything. The world was already burning in the fires of World War I. And one cold evening, the British police knocked loudly on the door of his luxurious London home. In an instant, the man who painted the British elite and was considered an untouchable star was turned into a criminal. How did it happen that a man who painted the British elite, who befriended lords, who held a British passport and a noble title, suddenly found himself behind bars as an enemy of the state? The year is 1917. Police arrive at the luxurious London estate of one of Europe's most famous artists. Within minutes, Philip de Laszlo, the genius for whom emperors sat perfectly still, is arrested and thrown into prison. To understand how this could happen, we need to go back a little. Just yesterday, his life seemed perfect. His long-awaited love with Lucy Guinness, British citizenship, lines of royalty, a lavish estate, children. But the world was already burning. World War I. The world split in half. Us versus them, friends and traitors. And right here, Philip de Laszlo fell into a trap from which there was almost no escape. He was a British subject, but he was born in Hungary, a country that had become part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, one of Britain's main enemies. His heritage, his correspondence with relatives across enemy lines, his old ties to European aristocracy. It was more than enough. What was a normal life yesterday was branded as espionage today. In times of war, paranoia doesn't look for evidence, it invents it. For a man who spent his entire life breathing beauty and art, This arrest was a crushing blow. The reputation he had built over decades began crumbling before his eyes. Commissions vanished. Friends turned away. His health rapidly deteriorated from the constant stress and humiliation. He sat in a cold cell, not knowing if he would ever hold a paintbrush again. 12 months of exhausting interrogations, background checks, and humiliation. And finally, in 1919, he was exonerated. Completely. For a total lack of any evidence. He walked out a free man, but he stepped into a completely different world. The old Europe he used to paint had burned to the ground. Collapsed. Monarchs lost their thrones. The world of grand balls and absolute power had turned to ash. It seemed his era was over for good. His best years behind him. His art no longer needed by anyone. But the fate that had tested him so brutally had one last, unexpected gift waiting for him. Very soon, a little quiet, shy girl would sit before his easel. Someone you undoubtedly know, a girl destined to become the symbol of a whole new century. History ruthlessly proves that what took generations to build through grueling labor, colossal fortunes, and centuries of culture and architecture can be destroyed in a single fatal moment, vanished without a trace, and with absolutely no way back. This is exactly what happened. Philip de Laszlo walked out of prison into a completely different world. The old Europe he knew and painted his entire life had burned to the ground. Empires lay in ruins. Monarchs lost their thrones. Palaces stood empty. The world that once bowed before his brush no longer existed. It seemed that his era had vanished along with that old world. But Philip did what he did best. He worked relentlessly to rise again. He returned to his studio. The line outside his door wasn't as long as it used to be, but he kept working slowly, stubbornly, almost silently. For him, painting was probably never just a profession. It was his only way to breathe. His work was even featured in the art competitions at the 1932 Summer Olympics. And it was during these final years that fate handed him the most symbolic moment of his entire career. A little, shy girl sat before him. Now, if you already know or can guess who she is, drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't figured it out yet, keep listening closely and don't forget to hit that like button. In her eyes, he saw the exact same thing he had once captured in the eyes of Pope Leo XIII, an understated majesty that doesn't come from a crown, but from within. Only this time, it was the majesty of a new world. Her name was Elizabeth, the future queen of Great Britain. The son of a poor Budapest tailor, who started his journey by fixing scratches on strangers' photographs, was now painting the face of a little girl destined to become the icon of an entire century. It was as if his life had finally come full circle. In October 1937, inside his London studio, Philip de Laszlo was working on yet another portrait. He had no idea this piece would be one of his last. The artist's heart stopped. He had survived betrayal, fame, love, prison, and the collapse of an entire era, but he couldn't survive a heart attack. He left behind thousands of portraits, the faces of those who shaped history. Yet the ultimate question of this story remains, did he ever truly find himself? Or did he spend his entire life as a master who could beautifully capture the souls of others, but never found the time to understand his own? He is remembered as the last great court painter of Europe, a man who managed to paint the old world just a brief moment before it vanished forever. Thank you for taking this journey with me. The story of Philip de Laszlo is a powerful reminder of how far a person can go to reshape their destiny, and the profound price they must pay for it. Let me know in the comments, which moment struck you the most? His triumph at the Vatican? The fight for Lucy Guinness's love? His arrest at the absolute peak of his fame? Or the portrait of young Elizabeth as a symbol of a changing era? I read every single comment. If this story made you think, please leave a like and subscribe. There are so many more names ahead, figures who changed art, and whom art changed forever. Until next time,